All right, let's spend a minute and just talk about the path that Bitcoin has to 12K ish or whatever we think is next if it breaks up here. And we'll talk about the potential downside if it breaks down. So let's just dig right into the chart. This is the very simplistic version of what we're looking at. We've got a weekly level at around 10,150, 10.2K, and then the weekly high after that is just over 11.5K. So if we get a weekly close above this level, then we're going to look for a weekly tap up here around this one. Personally, I think with the amount of time that we've spent coiling here, I don't think that we'll even stop at this gap, but it depends on your time frame, how many days or weeks that we think that this could occur. We're seeing a lot of bullish strength on these lower time frames. We saw a weekly recovery of that downward candle. We are right into resistance here, and the next thing that happens is going to be pretty quick in my mind. And the potential for upside is there around 11.5 at a minimum in my mind. And that's kind of the weekly view on the downward side. The real downward momentum is if you break below 8.7, because that's where we had 4 weeks there in terms of your weekly opens and closes. If you get below 8.7, then that's what people are looking at when they're talking about these targets in the low to mid 7Ks. The daily gives us reason to be supportive of higher potential targets in terms of buy on dip areas, primarily the 200-day moving average and some other levels that have been used as both support and resistance, albeit a lot on both sides, but nevertheless some justifications for why 8K or so could be where you retrace from. In terms of a fib extension from the high back here to the low here, if we breach that high, make a new high, a fib extension is what we would look for. The 1.618 would actually send us up to about 14.5K. So it's certainly possible, would be a new high relative to this as well over the longer time frame. If we make that weekly close above 10.2, 10.150, then I think we would breach this weekly as well. So this is kind of target 1, and then target 2 is going to be an extension beyond that. We're obviously getting into some pretty severe levels at 1450. That gets us back into our all-time high mini consolidation that occurred back here, if you were to break that down into smaller time frames, and where we just barely wicked into at kind of the height of euphoria in mid-2019. All the fundamentals, Bitcoin as a chaos asset, all that stuff looks pretty fantastic for Bitcoin here, in the light of the halvening and the light of what's going on in the world and everything else. The stock market is still going up, not really showing signs of selling off. There's a lot of reasons to be supportive of Bitcoin's potential here. And then on the mid time frames, you can just see continued consolidation, failure to make new highs, but pretty clear 2 sets of higher lows here after especially this liquidity punch that you had here. So made lows from this, but it ended up just setting the range boundary for the broader consolidation. So now we're getting to a more realistic decision point. I am biased for upside, so this is the trade that I'm looking for. I'm already long in some ways, and I've got more longs that can trigger from a little bit higher, essentially if we make new local highs here. So that's the short version that I have in terms of a path to 12K. If you want to look at this pennant diagonal thing, then you can. These are so easy to redraw. If it could go a little higher and then then it fails and you end up redrawing it like this, things like that. So a little tougher to count too much on that lower time frame pennant, but certainly if we get our new daily highs above 10K, weekly high above 10.2-ish, those are really great confirmations, and we're certainly seeing this thing coil up for $1,000 plus move. Depending on the direction, if we go down, I'm going to be looking at 8K. I know that's before. A lot of people will be, but I'm going to stick to my system and buy the dip that matches my personal criteria. And then for upside, I'm looking for at minimum 11.5 and probably higher on some intra-week activity. But on the weekly scale, wouldn't be surprised if we do break up, if we close that weekly back at 11.5, even if we go above it in some kind of nearer term method. Let me move my picture-in-picture here for a second. One other reason we see potential for breakouts here is we've seen declining volume, which just signals that this market is coiling back from our high volumes to the capitulation that we saw in March. We've seen a significant recovery, so I'm not trying to discount the potential for, bearish retests. We're not seeing that in legacy markets. We're not seeing that in gold markets or anywhere else. And we're seeing continued, even on these impulse pushes here and here, we're still seeing declining peaks overall. So we're looking for a significant potential for breakout volume here on Bitcoin. I'm biased, like I said, to 11.5, and if I'm buying a dip, 8K, but I'm playing this looking for upside officially today. That's how I'm looking at Bitcoin, and I hope this helps you create some confirmation bias for yourself or challenge your thinking or whatever else you have in mind. Trying to keep it simple, not looking at too much, trying to just look at the basics, and chart's the chart. That's what I see. Hope this helps you. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.